In this video, we will talk about the Mayan civilization, the mystery of which excites minds and fascinates the world. So, in 1943, several men were apprehended in Brazil during a failed attempt to rob a museum. Upon searching them, authorities discovered a crystal skull. During the interrogation, it was revealed that the suspects were Germans connected to the SS, but they actually belonged to a secret order called Ahnenerbe, which was part of the Nazi structure and included some of Himmler's most devoted followers. This organization was dedicated to searching for magical artifacts around the world, aiming to link Nazi ideology with ancient mystical practices. These artifacts were believed to possess magical powers and could predict the future. The Nazis believed that with the help of the skulls, they could gain control of the world. Rumors about the crystal skulls quickly spread among occultists and adventurers. Some claimed to have seen the skulls with their own eyes, while others told stories about the incredible properties of these artifacts. One such skull, known as the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was supposedly found in Mayan ruins in Belize. The Nazis, hungry for power, couldn't miss the opportunity to possess these mysterious objects. They believed that the crystal skulls were the key to world domination. Expeditions were sent to the jungles of Central and South America, hoping to find these artifacts and uncover their secrets. But what if these skulls are just fakes? We'll talk about them a little later. The Maya civilization, eras and features. The Maya were a unique civilization known for much, but as expected, information is still lacking. Research on this topic is controversial, blending archaeology, ethnography, and conspiracy theories. We will explore some of these theories, and I must admit, I tend to believe in one of them. The great mystery of the origin and disappearance of the Maya has always intrigued me. I found that many leading pieces of evidence regarding their collapse seem implausible. The Maya were a people who inhabited areas of modern-day Mexico, including Yucatan, Campeche, Tabasco, and Chiapas, as well as Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. They were not an empire, but rather a confederation of city-states, each with its own rulers. There was a supreme leader and a high priest, and these cities shared a common culture, traded goods, and waged wars against one another. Historians note that the Maya civilization began to take shape as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. Development periods of the Maya. Historians divide the development of the Maya civilization into 3 key periods: pre-classic, classic, and post-classic. The pre-classic period spans from 2000 BCE to 250 CE. During this time, city-states emerged, and the Maya began to master agriculture, cultivating corn and cacao. They were influenced by the more enigmatic Olmec civilization, about which even less is known. The Olmecs left behind majestic stone heads, but their origins and reasons for disappearance remain unclear. In the southern trading cities of the Maya, such as El Mirador and Pakal, impressive pyramids began to be constructed, many of which can still be seen today. Chichen Itza, with its partially carved stone blocks, also dates back to this era when magnificent structures began to rise from the jungle. The Maya actively studied astronomy, observing the stars from the tops of their pyramids and creating complex astronomical calendars. The Maya had a unique chronological calendar that included 13 constellations, unlike the usual 12 found in Western astrology. Each zodiac sign was assigned its own name. For instance, the pig corresponded to Sagittarius, the deer to Capricorn, and the monkey to Aquarius, among others. They calculated the length of the year to be 365 days, which stands as one of the many mysteries of their advanced knowledge. The Maya were the first civilization on Earth to create one of the most accurate chronological systems among ancient cultures. Their calendar system included a 260-day count made up of 13-week periods, reflecting the cycles of life. The Maya calendar accounted for the movements of the sun, moon, and the planet Venus. Additionally, they utilized a vigesimal system of counting, as opposed to our decimal system, making date recording quite complex. I can't help but recall the frenzy that erupted in 2012 regarding the supposed end of the world according to the Maya calendar. The events of that year turned into a true spectacle as many people prepared for the apocalypse based on interpretations of the Maya calendar, which was allegedly set to conclude in December 2012. People literally scrambled to stock up on water and non-perishable food as if the end were unavoidable. The media and the internet fueled this hysteria. And I personally know individuals who hoarded vast quantities of supplies in anticipation of the apocalypse. However, the world did not end. Moreover, the ancient Maya would undoubtedly have been astonished by the global panic triggered by this date. In reality, the whole hysteria regarding the end of the world stemmed from cultural misunderstanding. The Maya had a unit of time known as the Baktun, which equals 144,000 days or about 394 years, similar to a Mayan century. 13 Baktuns made up a solar era lasting 5,125 years and 4.5 months. According to their calendar, a new era was set to begin in 2012. For the Maya, this simply meant a transition to a new cycle, an astronomical event significant primarily for astronomers and mathematicians. While they held mystical beliefs that the era change could be accompanied by various calamities, there were no indications of an impending apocalypse. The Maya did have prophecies concerning the end of the world, but these were unrelated to their calendar. It seems that in the 1970s, amidst the hippie movement, an esoteric figure in the United States recalled these prophecies, igniting widespread excitement. Thus, this entire saga, as it became clear, was originally a myth concocted by 20th century hippies and had nothing to do with Maya culture. Maya writing system. Nevertheless, among the ancient civilizations of the Americas, only the Maya developed a fully fledged writing system, even in their pre-classic period. Their system was not alphabetic like that of Europeans. They used hieroglyphs, including symbols representing animals and people. Later, scholars were able to decipher this writing, discovering that the symbols represented sounds rather than letters. Thus, their writing was phonetic. By combining individual sounds, they could form words and grasp the deeper meaning of the written text. During this period, the Maya had a multi-layered calendar system: ritual, lunar, and solar. They built temples, adorned walls with hieroglyphs, constructed tombs, and left ritual offerings, similar to the Egyptian pharaohs. Due to similarities with Egyptian pyramids, some theorists have attempted to draw parallels between these civilizations. At the same time, the Maya possessed unique mathematical knowledge, including the concept of zero. Without this knowledge, other cultures such as the Roman or Greek achieved lesser success in calculations. This aspect of their development remains a mystery. The Classic period and the flourishing of civilization. The Classic period of the Maya, according to historians, spans from 325 to 925 CE. During this time, they formed a powerful confederation of city-states with a clear hierarchy, including a supreme ruler and a high priest. Literary sources and texts emerged, documenting the achievements of Maya culture. The arts of stone carving, architecture, and ceramics reached new heights. Specialists note that in the previous era, the pre-Classic period, they developed in mountainous regions and then, possibly due to natural disasters, migrated to the plains. It was during this time that their magnificent temples and pyramids flourished, which now attract tourists in Mexico. This period was characterized by political dynamics. Rulers succeeded one another, and a golden age of the Classic period was followed by its decline. The Postclassic period and the decline of Maya civilization. In the Postclassic period, which began around 900 CE and lasted until 1500 CE, the situation for the Maya became critical. Historians point to a combination of factors such as resource depletion, agricultural decline, overpopulation, and epidemics, exacerbated by the invasion of the Toltecs. This led to the degradation of cities and the gradual disappearance of Maya cultures. The last significant center in the Yucatan was the city of Chichen Itza, where the Maya began to resettle. Over time, their cities became deserted, and the peoples engaged in wars both among themselves and against the Toltecs, ultimately leading to their absorption by the Toltecs. By 1500, a new threat loomed on the horizon: the Spanish invasion. Christopher Columbus, seeking a new trade route to India, discovered America, where the Spaniards first encountered the indigenous population. At that time, the civilizations of the Incas and Aztecs were at their peak, while the Maya were in decline. Tales of the former glory of the Maya survived in folklore, and the Spaniards began to explore new lands and export resources, particularly silver. Spanish conquerors, armed with firearms and horses, easily defeated the indigenous peoples, who could not effectively resist such modern weaponry. The Spaniards, viewing the local population as savages, sought to convert them to Catholicism. After conquering the land, Spanish missionaries began to preach and tried to convert the indigenous people to Christianity. Establishing connections through local chiefs, the two cultures began to interact. Most records of Maya culture came from Spanish Bishop Diego de Landa, who aimed to convert the pagans to his faith. The already defeated indigenous people began to interact peacefully with the Spaniards. However, the Inquisition was harsh on those who continued to worship their gods. De Landa described the Maya as strong, resilient people with interesting beauty standards. Men painted their faces with bright red mixtures, which added to their masculinity. Women's beauty, in turn, included cross-eyedness. To achieve this effect, girls used jade and rubber balls tying them between their eyebrows. This created an effect that was considered attractive in their culture. Interestingly, much of what we know about the Maya and their culture has been recorded thanks to the efforts of Spanish missionaries and explorers, despite the dramatic changes that occurred in their society. In Maya culture, there were traditions and beauty standards that were considered quite impressive. Men often wore short skirts and fitted cloaks made of agave fibers and feathers from rare birds, which became a characteristic aspect of their appearance. Their strong torsos stood out against the bright red paint that adorned their faces, symbolizing masculinity and embodying ideals of strength. It was a time of full macho, where men flaunted massive jewelry, including gold bracelets worn on both arms and legs. However, historians believe that these adornments served not only for beauty, but also for support, similar to how modern athletes use specialized gear to prevent injuries. The Maya were also renowned for their craftsmanship in jewelry making, using emeralds, turquoise, and jade, which was also valued in China. Sandals were the primary type of footwear for men. One of the main attributes symbolizing status was a mirror, hinting that the ancient Maya might have been somewhat akin to modern-day glamorous Instagram influencers. Men spent considerable time preparing. They painted their faces, donned jewelry, and lovingly gazed into mirrors before leaving home. According to Maya manuscripts, women were attributed special significance regarding modesty. They were expected to behave decently and with restraint. For example, if a woman looked at a man provocatively, it could lead to her being punished by having pepper put in her eyes. Ultimately, such strictness and control made the Maya far from a peaceful nation. The political structure of the Maya was characterized by its brutality and strict hierarchy. Society was organized around tribal leaders, with each city-state ruled by its own leader, a chief or king, who held authority over all citizens. Wars between cities were not always aimed at territorial conquest. Rather, they were often directed towards plunder and the enslavement of the enemy. Slavery played an important role in the social structure of the Maya. The high priest was a key figure in these city-states. His knowledge of astronomy and astrological observations, particularly of Venus, allowed him to predict favorable times for agricultural work and civic affairs, as well as to determine the gender of the chief's future children. Additionally, the priest conducted sacrificial rituals, sometimes involving human sacrifices, part of the mechanisms invoked to appeal to the gods for things like rain. Spanish conquistadors, witnessing these sacrifices, considered the Maya to be brutal beings. They described rituals that included the dismemberment of young boys at the tops of pyramids to extract their hearts for sacrifice, believing that such practices justified their own cruelty. These actions were dedicated to the rituals of the god of war or the god of rain, making the actions of the Maya particularly horrific in the eyes of the Spaniards. The Maya were certainly not peaceful people. Quite the opposite. They were bloodthirsty devotees of human sacrifice. However, this assertion is only half a myth. The fact is that all Central American peoples had specific cults that the Spanish conquistadors viewed with horror, initially even considering the indigenous people to be less than human. This was not only due to the gruesome images of the gods, whether it was a peaceful god of rain or corn. He was depicted as a terrifying monster. The Maya had a blood cult and believed that the gods craved human sacrifice. True believers were expected to offer their own blood, especially in the case of noble individuals whose blood was considered divine. For instance, a person might pierce their tongue, ears, or lips and drip blood onto pieces of bark, after which they would set the bark on fire, naively believing that the blood would ascend to the gods. There were other methods as well, such as making cuts on the back, which were also said to be offerings to the gods. Sometimes, fanatical believers would even lose consciousness from blood loss, which was valued as a direct contact with the gods. For the Maya, the question of self-sacrifice was practical rather than ethical, and they had special tools for cutting the skin. Unlike the Aztecs, the Maya did not have mass slaughterhouses, where prisoners were killed by the hundreds in spectacular bloody rituals. Nevertheless, prisoners of war were mostly sacrificed, their heads were cut off, and then the rest of their bodies. Later, upon encountering the Aztecs, the Maya began to adopt their practices, including the extraction of hearts from living captives. More brutal methods were also employed, such as tying a person to a tree, shooting, or quartering. Priests would skin the dead and wear their skins, while the bodies were consumed by the local inhabitants. The treatment of victims depended on their status. If a captive was a brave warrior who showed no fear in captivity, he was treated with respect, but his head was still cut off. There were cases where noble captives were sacrificed only under certain stars. For example, the king of the city of Palenque was held captive for several years until the priests determined that the gods wanted a roasted king for dinner. If, however, a captive displayed fear and begged for mercy, he was humiliated and insulted before execution, and his nails were pulled out. Another significant element of culture was the ball game, played on a special stone court. Two teams fought to score a ball through a hole in the wall, using various parts of their bodies except for their hands. The losing team faced execution. They were sacrificed because the city needed to summon rain. The Maya also engaged in trade via rivers and land, as evidenced by the discovery of boats. In this hierarchical society, all important resources, such as agricultural products and precious items, were controlled by the aristocracy, while common people received virtually nothing from them. Another significant ritual practiced among the Maya was the throwing of young girls into a deep well. This rite was complex and symbolic, where it was expected that the selected girls would undergo a trial that could become a test of their survival. Apparently, the ritual was connected to the belief in the ability of girls to communicate with spirits, which gave it special significance in their culture. During the ritual, the girls who found themselves in the well remained in darkness, waiting for the opportunity to surface. Not every participant could endure such a trial. According to some reports, only 1 in 5 survived. Those who managed to emerge after a few hours were perceived as having special abilities and could serve as mediums between the world of the living and the spiritual realm. When the girls regained consciousness after the trial, they entered a trance, which was believed to allow them to receive information from spirits. In an altered state of consciousness, they reported what they heard from the depths of the well. For instance, the water spirit might predict a terrible drought that would befall their lands. These predictions were extremely important for the chiefs, as they influenced their readiness for war or the advisability of conducting agricultural work. Specifically, if the spirit foretold a disaster in the coming month, the chiefs were forced to abandon military campaigns, directing all their efforts towards preparing for a possible famine and ensuring the well-being of their subjects. Shamanism played a significant role in Maya culture, and priests used extracts from various tree roots and mushrooms to prepare drinks similar in effect to ayahuasca. These drinks were believed to induce altered states of consciousness comparable to the effects of LSD. In a trance state, priests predicted the future, and such practices were widespread among the Maya. The Spaniards, witnessing these rituals, recorded them in their descriptions. Bishop Diego de Landa arrived in Yucatan in 1549, along with the conquistadors. He became one of the first to leave records about the Maya. However, he is also responsible for the destruction of most of their artifacts. Today, only 4 Maya codices remain: the Madrid, Paris, Dresden, and Grolier codices. These scrolls were written on tree bark and placed in cases made from jaguar skin. Thanks to these manuscripts, we have unique evidence of Maya culture, although the overwhelming majority of their heritage was destroyed. The Spaniards not only burned numerous artifacts, but also conducted mass executions, binding indigenous people and burning them alive, as well as torturing priests. The only representatives of the Maya who interacted with the Spaniards were scribes, individuals who held a high position in the social hierarchy. Scribes possessed knowledge passed down through generations, and the Spaniards taught them their language, facilitating cultural exchange, but also leading to the destruction of Maya traditions. Diego de Landa preserved only a few manuscripts, but most documents were destroyed. The Spaniards destroyed stone statues of Maya deities and burned many manuscripts. Despite this, they could not erase all inscriptions on temples or obliterate all images depicting important rituals and feasts of the chiefs. The knowledge of the Maya is astonishing. They were believed to possess outstanding astronomical knowledge comparable to modern standards. They had a profound understanding of astronomical cycles, such as the movements of stars, the sun, and the moon, and used this knowledge to create their calendars and methods of timekeeping. The architectural achievements of the Maya were also impressive, built on mathematical principles that ensured their accuracy and stability. The main spiritual concept for the Maya was service to the universe, making the cult of time of paramount importance to them. Furthermore, the Maya possessed outstanding knowledge in seismology, meteorology, and geodesy, allowing them to determine soil composition and predict earthquakes. In medicine, the Maya also made significant advances. They knew how to remove tumors using the smoke of narcotic herbs as anesthesia, and they were knowledgeable about trepanation and the treatment of fractures. These medical achievements are remarkable, as the Maya understood the nature of infectious diseases, took care of personal hygiene, and were aware of the mechanisms of epidemics. The initial encounter with the Spaniards and their diseases, such as smallpox, chickenpox, and venereal diseases, became a true catastrophe for the indigenous peoples, as their empire had no immunity to such infections. Thus, it remains a mystery how the ancient Maya could remove tumors and accurately determine the length of the year as 365 days. Their culture was not limited to manuscripts. It included frescoes, architectural monuments, and evidence of the significance of music and dance. Music was used for both the entertainment of the aristocracy and in ritual actions, while dances were part of magical practices. The Maya worshipped their gods using complex and detailed rituals, sometimes involving narcotic herbs and trance states during dances. Tattoos also held significant importance in their culture, but were generally worn by members of the higher castes and priests, as the tattooing process was extremely painful. Despite their mastered techniques of trepanation and anesthesia, only the most resilient could endure the suffering associated with tattooing. The Maya had musical instruments, drums, flutes, and trumpets. Although primitive, they were actively used. Dances were at the center of all social events and rituals, and played an important role in their culture. The most horrifying aspect for the Spaniards were the religious sacrifices, during which hearts were torn from living people. This practice shocked the conquerors, and became one of the symbols of the wild and brutal side of the Maya cults. Sacrifices among the Maya. The Maya had many different forms of sacrifice, including live burial. This was considered an honor, as the victim was seen as chosen by the gods, allowing them to communicate with the spirits of the underworld. In their culture, becoming a sacrifice was not seen as punishment. Rather, such a fate elevated a person. The gods of the Maya were represented as unusual beings. They were not merely immortal and ephemeral souls. Images of gods in the forms of old men and children suggest that they could be perceived as mortal. In Maya mythology, the gods could be killed, which gave their characters reality and complexity. There was a concept of multiple worlds, the middle world inhabited by people, the heavens, and the underworld. To reach the heavens, souls had to pass through 13 circles of severe trials, as mentioned in their sacred texts. This was a key aspect of their religious beliefs. Additionally, the ball game held an important place in Maya culture, resembling modern football. In this game, players were allowed to touch the ball with various parts of their bodies, although in some versions, only hips, legs, and shoulders were permitted. The balls were made of rubber, and the Maya had knowledge of how to produce rubber by extracting sap and transforming it into finished products. This impressive skill, although not related to chemistry in the modern sense, allowed them to create solid rubber from raw sap and shape it into various items. When one Maya tribe defeated another, prisoners of war who were not turned into slaves or concubines were sacrificed. This resembled the sacrificial practices of the Aztecs and Incas, with such executions considered exemplary. The sacrifices of prisoners of war differed from those offered to the gods, as the latter were thrown from pyramids, which was considered a great honor. In summary, the Maya civilization was complex, having created numerous temples in dense jungles but later losing its former glory. By the time the Spaniards arrived, the civilization was in decline. The Maya possessed extensive knowledge in medicine, astronomy, and mathematics, yet seemingly could not defend themselves. This raises the question: they could accurately calculate the cycles of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon, but did not have sufficient weaponry for self-defense. There is a theory put forward by American historian Thompson, suggesting that Maya civilization surpassed other human civilizations, and the lack of weaponry was explained by the Maya belief that civilization could only be peaceful. However, this theory seems implausible, as conflicts have been a part of human existence since ancient times. Later, Thompson himself abandoned this idea. As a result, the Spaniards began the conquest of Latin America, marking the beginning of the most exciting phase from the perspective of Europeans. One of the most famous conquistadors, Hernán Cortés, after defeating the Aztecs in 1521, began his exploratory campaigns, embarking on the conquest of new lands filled with riches and mysteries. Since the late 16th century, mentions of the Maya civilization began to disappear against the backdrop of Spanish conquest and subsequent conflicts, and they were not recalled until the 19th century. In 1840, two Americans, John Lloyd Stevens and Frederick Catherwood, found themselves in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. While exploring these lands, they stumbled upon amazing stone structures hidden in the jungle. Catherwood, being an artist, created the first drawings since photography had not yet been invented. They sketched what they saw and were astonished by their discoveries. Traveling through more than 40 known cities such as Palenque and Uxmal, they uncovered pyramids and made sketches of stone statues and carvings depicting a flying serpent. Their work soon reached Europe, sparking genuine admiration and interest in the Maya civilization, which, as it turned out, had built pyramids almost identical to those in Egypt. In 1861, another important discovery occurred. The French scholar Brasseur de Bourbourg published a manuscript titled Popol Vuh. This manuscript, previously taken by the Spaniards, had disappeared in Europe and was rediscovered in the early 18th century. The book was translated into Spanish, and then Bourbourg translated it into French, revealing that it was one of the oldest books about the creation of the world, written by the Maya people. No one could say for certain when Popol Vuh was written. It might even be older than the Bible. This text contains a story about a journey to the underworld, reminiscent of Greek myths about descent into the realm of Hades, the god of death. The mythology of the Maya represents a grand religious pantheon, and the interest in this civilization led to the beginning of expeditions to Mexico. One of the first known researchers was Edward Herbert Thompson, who studied the sacred cenotes. Cenotes are natural caves and depressions in the ground filled with water. Thompson arrived in Mexico in 1910, and local residents told him that their ancestors claimed that people were thrown into these cenotes as religious sacrifices. However, they added that this was just a myth. With this belief, Thompson donned a diving suit and submerged into the murky waters. During his dive, he and his team found human bones at the bottom, as well as ceramics, rings, and jewelry, confirming that these were indeed sacrificial sites. Research revealed that not only female bones were found, despite the myth that only virgins were sacrificed, but also bones of men and children. Thus, it became evident that cenotes were used as places for sacrifices, generating significant interest in scientific circles. Next, John Eric Thompson, an Englishman and another researcher, emerged on the scene. He began studying Maya cities and was the first to find and explore the famous temple of Chichen Itza, which quickly gained fame. This temple is dedicated to the god of air, Kukulkan, the flying serpent, and twice a year, in autumn and spring, the steps of the pyramid cast shadows toward the middle and the head of the serpent below, creating the effect of a light path. At this time, a sacrifice might have occurred on the upper platform, where the heart could be ripped from the victim and thrown down, aligning the timing of the ritual with the position of the sun. Thompson, exploring this remarkable civilization, was the first to study their ceramics and manuscripts, making efforts to decipher the language. However, his attempts often failed. He had his own theory based on the book of the first bishop, Diego de Landa, where Maya hieroglyphs were translated into the Latin alphabet. However, the deciphering proved insufficiently accurate. Thompson proposed a bizarre idea that the Maya were a civilization that did not engage in wars, as there were no stone carvings depicting killings. However, later such images were found and people asked, "What do you say to that, Mr. Thompson?" He replied, "No, this must be a religious matter. They did not wage wars because they did not even have weapons, as the Spaniards wrote." Of course, this assertion raised doubts. Research showed that the Maya, like other ancient civilizations, had their conflicts and wars. Thompson's theory was subjected to criticism and skepticism. Mexico was actively being studied, and this activity soon led to scandals over the illegal export of artifacts from the country. Many treasures were sent to England and the USA. The Mexican government began to combat this problem, although its efforts were often ineffective. Edward Herbert Thompson became a key figure in the study of the Maya civilization, and when the Russian scholar Yuri Knorosov deciphered the Maya alphabet in the 1950s, Thompson rejected his achievements, claiming that this work was a product of communist ideology from the Soviet Union and that it was not worth believing in his theories. He insisted that only his approach was correct and scientifically justified. One of Thompson's most significant achievements was conducting excavations and reconstructing the Temple of the Warriors in Chichen Itza, a unique architectural structure. An interesting fact, when the late Queen Elizabeth II visited Mexico, Thompson was appointed her guide. In the presence of the Queen, he performed a ritual according to ancient Maya customs, praying for rain on a hot day. Miraculously, it rained and everyone marveled. What an outstanding man he is. Thus began the active discovery of the Maya civilization. Excavations were conducted, stone carvings, frescoes, and pyramids were found. Maya cities were gradually unearthed from the ground. This should not be considered a conspiracy, but indeed, many important architectural monuments began to be revealed thanks to the efforts of researchers. Thompson described in detail the structure of the Maya state, the governance of city-states, the supreme rulers and priests, their agriculture, culture, and so on. He created a cohesive picture of their society, which later became known as the Thompson system. Throughout almost his entire life, Thompson defended the model of an egalitarian society, claiming that the Maya aristocracy and priests were so enlightened that they avoided wars, believing that civilization could only develop peacefully. When evidence of military actions was presented to him, such as stone reliefs depicting shackled prisoners of war, Thompson responded that such scenes had nothing to do with wars. They were merely astronomical rituals, and the prisoners were perhaps destined for sacrifice. However, later he was forced to admit that his theories did not withstand criticism. One of the most important discoveries was made by Mexican scholar Alberto Ruz in 1952 when he found the tomb of the Maya leader Pakal. He investigated the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque, known for its carvings and texts. However, he found a concealed passage in a secret room, which at first seemed impossible. Upon further excavations, they discovered a secret passage leading to a cave where the tomb was located. Previously, researchers believed that Maya pyramids were not used for burials, considering them exclusively religious and astronomical constructions. However, Alberto Ruz found the tomb of the leader Pakal, where he discovered a death mask, jade jewelry, and other treasures. This confirmed the existence of a powerful leader who waged wars. This discovery generated widespread interest and reshaped perceptions of the Maya civilization, placing it at the center of attention for researchers. But the most significant breakthrough in understanding their writing occurred thanks to the deciphering done by Knorosov, which opened new horizons for studying Maya culture and its legacy. The Maya had many books known as codices. They were essentially folding books made of bark. However, for a long time, historians were unable to derive any benefit from them, as it required not only access to the books, but also an understanding of what was written in them. Serious problems arose with deciphering their writing until the mid-20th century, when the Soviet scholar Yuri Knorosov managed to crack this ancient code. How Yuri Knorosov deciphered Maya writing is an exciting and mysterious story that captivates the imagination and raises many questions. Knorosov, a Soviet scholar, never left the borders of the Soviet Union and had no opportunity to visit Mexico. Yet he was able to unveil the mystery of the Maya alphabet by studying books, manuscripts, and their copies. His hypothesis was that the Maya alphabet is not alphabetic, like the Latin or any other alphabet, but represents a phonetic system. This meant that by combining two hieroglyphs, one could produce two sounds that together would correspond to a specific word, such as turtle. While this is an oversimplification, his work was based on a complex mathematical model and linguistic studies. In 1952, Knorosov announced his discovery, and the Soviet Union naturally supported him, claiming that it was the USSR that had deciphered the Maya alphabet. However, Western scholars, especially Edward Thompson, rejected his ideas, seeking to maintain their monopoly on discoveries in this field. The scientific community became divided into camps, and initially, Knorosov was not taken seriously. However, gradually his research began to gain popularity, and other scholars started to realize that a significant discovery had indeed occurred. Knorosov employed a purely mathematical approach, combining linguistic and mathematical research, which distinguished his method from the deciphering of Egyptian writing based on the Rosetta Stone, where scholars had clues and keys to the cipher. Although Knorosov did not have access to the manuscripts, his approach proved successful. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Knorosov visited Latin America and was awarded the Mexican Order of the Eagle, seeing the Maya pyramids with his own eyes. Despite his reserved nature and introverted character, he made a significant impression on the scientific community. Everyone remained puzzled about how he managed to decipher Maya writing without access to all these artifacts. However, his success became a vivid example of how the ability to think outside the box and use diverse methods can lead to outstanding scientific discoveries. The discrepancies between the knowledge and daily life of the Maya indeed raise many questions and theories. This civilization, capable of building massive pyramids and creating an accurate calendar while possessing significant knowledge in astronomy and medicine, did not invent the wheel. This factual discrepancy raises interesting topics for discussion. Historians note that the absence of horses in the region may have been the reason the Maya did not have a need for the wheel. However, there are other animals, such as buffalo and deer, that could have been used as draft animals. This leaves open the question of why this technological achievement was not realized. Moreover, despite their achievements in architecture and science, the Maya did not have a developed system of weaponry to protect their cities. Their primary weapon was spears with stone tips, and, in essence, they remained primitive tribes at the time of their encounter with the Spanish conquistadors. The question of how such a highly developed society could be so militarily vulnerable creates a perplexing paradox. In contrast, one might consider the ancient Roman Empire, which, despite its collapse, left behind a legacy of new cities, castles, trade, and legal systems, such as the Salic law in the Frankish state, based on Roman laws. In contrast, the Maya, despite their achievements, lacked continuity, creating a sense of disconnection between their cultural level and practical life. These discrepancies generate numerous theories and hypotheses. Some researchers suggest that the Maya may have focused on spiritual and religious development, leaving practical technologies aside. Others believe that the social structure and governance could have limited innovation. In any case, this dissonance between high achievements and primitive living leaves many questions that scholars continue to seek answers to. Our questions pertain to a range of interesting and profound aspects regarding the civilizations of the Maya, Aztecs, and Incas, as well as their architecture and culture. Reevaluating these moments indeed raises many questions about the origins of these remarkable structures and the civilization itself. When the Spaniards arrived in Latin America and saw the majestic pyramids, one might assume they would be interested in learning how these structures were built. However, as you rightly noted, the Maya may not have been able to provide a clear explanation of the construction process. They could refer to the traditions of their ancestors, but lacked direct knowledge of the methods used in the distant past. This creates a paradox considering their high achievements in other fields, such as astronomy and mathematics. The question of how these structures were erected and how enormous stones were transported for their construction remains mystical. For instance, the Great Pyramid of Cholula looks like an ordinary hill, but on its summit, the Spaniards built a Catholic church. In reality, it is not a hill, but the largest pyramid in the world. Although it is not the tallest, it ranks first in terms of width and area. Clearly, such an impressive structure could not have been created solely by local indigenous people. Here's another example. One of the most impressive wonders of the world is Angkor Wat in Cambodia. This stone city was discovered by archaeologists amidst the jungle, as if it had arisen from nowhere. The astonishing structure raises the question. Modern Cambodians are clearly not descendants of the civilization that built it. Even the distance between the temple steps suggests they were designed for people significantly taller. Where did this mysterious civilization come from? The Aztecs, Maya, and Incas mention in their manuscripts that gods came from the other shore, taught people grain agriculture, brought fire, and taught them to build magnificent pyramids. But why did these gods arrive from the other shore? Does this correspond to the legend that our civilization has experienced 3 suns, each of which brought destruction? First a flood, then extreme heat, and then something else. The flood is present in the myths of peoples around the world, as well as in the Bible. But why were these pyramids built? Why was there such a need for height? One should not forget that their construction demonstrated precision in mathematical calculations. Could these pyramids have been not just cult structures but some kind of spaceports? These questions continue to baffle. Or perhaps these majestic buildings served as shelters in case of new floods. People might have built them tall to ensure their safety in the event of another flood. The image of Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, the bird god with light hair and a beard, comes to mind. Such features were not typical of indigenous leaders, including the Maya, which raises questions. Why did he look like this? Here, the myth of Atlantis resurfaces, a civilization that vanished due to catastrophe, while its priests may have dispersed across the world and passed on their knowledge to people. These are just conspiracy theories. I do not seek to actively promote them, but it is undeniable that the widely accepted chronology of Earth, asserted by historians, raises doubts. All these pyramids were likely built by a civilization of which nothing is known, and no one can say for sure how long ago this occurred. It is also worth noting that the Maya, as a civilization, suddenly disappeared. It is assumed that a natural disaster, likely a drought, could have been the cause. However, in the 21st century, scientists conducting astronomical research will establish that there was no drought during that period. Nevertheless, the Maya initially left the mountainous regions and migrated to the plains, and then simply vanished. Such civilizations do not disappear without a trace. There must be evidence of destruction, wars, or epidemics, but there is none. This does not happen. Moreover, the discrepancy in artifacts is astonishing. Imagine that we create smartphones but live with primitive habits, eating with our hands and lacking the simplest household items, even though we know about the planet Venus. It just does not make sense. The culture and knowledge of a civilization always develop in unison, encompassing all aspects of life, medicine, religion, culture, family relationships, and military affairs. It is impossible for a civilization that built pyramids not to have invented the wheel. This is a puzzlement for me. Perhaps it is worth suggesting that the modern descendants of the Maya, whom the Spaniards encountered, are not the heirs of the culture that built the pyramids. This great civilization was likely much older, and it is unclear how much time has passed, as these remarkable structures were clearly not created by the Maya but by someone else. Where did these people come from, and how many were there? It is evident that there were not many, as they could only pass their knowledge to a small group of people. But why did their legacy not spread? Why was there no second golden age for this civilization? This remains a mystery, but the main thing for me is that all of this seems quite absurd and implausible. You know, there was a civilization that erected grand pyramids and then vanished. The same can be said for ancient Egypt, about which we know a bit more, but still, such information from various corners of the planet is astonishing. We, Europeans, heirs to a great civilization, can trace our development from the times of the Huns and Vikings and know our roots. The Maya lacked such continuity. The gods once came, built something, taught something, and disappeared without a trace. And it is worth noting that these gods were also mortal. There are many strange aspects, for example in the tomb of Pakal, found by Alberto Ruz. There was a stand with a sarcophagus on which are depicted drawings already known today. One of them resembles a person in a spacesuit, which serves as a small argument in support of the theory that the builders of the pyramids may have arrived from outer space. This is a mystery. If you ever decide to visit Guatemala or Mexico, I have a list of the main attractions to see. These are the most significant Maya pyramids. The first is the La Danta Pyramid, located in El Mirador in Guatemala, which stands 72 meters tall. Next is the Pyramid of the Sun, located 40 kilometers from Mexico City, which historians believe was built in the 2nd century AD, and nearly reaches the height of La Danta, standing at about 71 meters. The third is the Pakal Pyramid, standing 70 meters tall, built in honor of the 27th ruler of the city. Although it is not very well preserved, it also stands at 71 meters in height. The Great Pyramid of Cholula, on top of which is a Catholic church, was long considered part of a mountain or overgrown area until archaeologists discovered that it is, in fact, a gigantic pyramid, the largest in the world by total area. It is also worth mentioning the El Tigre Pyramid, which is 55 meters tall, and Structure 1 in Calakmul, also 55 meters, of which nothing is known about its purpose. Of course, one can assume that such a majestic structure was not built for nothing. The Khaon Pyramid, standing 43 meters tall, is located in Karakol, while the Pyramid of the Moon reaches 42 meters and resembles Egyptian structures. Among the pyramids that look like constructions from a cosmic era, one should highlight Nohak-Mul, also 42 meters tall, built around 900 AD. Completing the list is the Pyramid of Kukulkan, often seen on postcards, which stands 30 meters tall, shorter than the others. Archaeologists continue to study this pyramid and find many Maya artifacts, making it one of the most recognized among Maya constructions. The mystery of the Maya crystal skulls. So, let's continue the topic of the crystal skulls. The story of the 13 skulls begins in 1927 when English archaeologist Albert Mitchell Hedges discovered the first crystal skull. Although many more skulls have been found, it is from this moment that their mysterious history began. No one knows how they were made. One of the skulls is in the British Museum and is not related to Mitchell Hedges. It belonged to French antiquarian Eugène Bobon, who allegedly acquired it from someone familiar with shamanic rituals. This person claimed that the skull predates Columbus and that the Maya used it for predictions. For example, to depict the god Kukulkan, as well as for forecasting floods, earthquakes, and the end of the world, if all 13 skulls were gathered. The skulls have many openings, and when light hits them, it refracts in astonishing ways, creating light effects that supposedly allow for predictions. There is even a story about a skull that could heal cancer. It came to a woman with a brain tumor, and after she interacted with the skull, the tumor allegedly disappeared. These skulls remain a mystery. How could the Maya create them? There are no traces of tools, and they are made of pure quartz crystal. Later, Mitchell Hedges found one skull without a jaw, which was discovered later. The jaw could connect to the skull using crystalline hinge joints, allowing it to move easily. The skull inspired awe in all who looked at it, and no one knows how it was made. The Maya did not have lasers, and no traces of tools used later to create glass items or other quartz objects remain. Moreover, many more than just 13 skulls have been found. In 1992, one skull was discovered that amazed everyone. It turned out to be twisted. Scientists determined that it was originally created in that form, not subjected to twisting after its manufacture. What force could have twisted it remains a mystery. There are many theories, but explaining how the Maya created these crystal skulls has yet to be achieved. Recently, one of the skulls was analyzed, and it was found to be made not of crystal, but of quartz, which is not found in Mexico. Traces of tools dating to the 19th century were also discovered, leading to the conclusion that the skull housed in the British Museum is a forgery created by the French antiquarian and has no relation to the Maya. Nevertheless, the scientific community and the public remain divided into two camps. Some consider these skulls mysterious artifacts of the ancient Maya civilization, while others assert that they are forgeries made later. For example, the Germans from Ahnenerbe believed that the 13 skulls would grant them power over the world. Such is the puzzling and mysterious story of the Maya, a great civilization that arose from nowhere and vanished without a trace. But I want to note that the descendants of the Maya still live today, which is a true historical miracle. This people, which arose 4,000 years ago, has gone through various stages of its history, from ancient captivities and feudal states to decline and conquests. Nevertheless, they continue to exist and have no intention of disappearing. That's all, friends. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.